Emails from a new batch of Epstein files appear to show Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, the former Duke of York, requesting inappropriate friends from one of the convicted pedophile's close associates.
When the latest batch of files landed from the United States last week, most people expected more of the same. Dense legal language, redactions, half-finished threads. What few expected was an email so blunt, so oddly casual, that it has now become one of the most talked about pieces of correspondence in the entire release. Because buried among the files is a message allegedly written by Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor in the summer of 2001. And the wording raises uncomfortable questions about his judgment, his social circle, and what he was saying behind the scenes at a time when pressure around Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell was beginning to build. The email was sent in August 2001 from an account labelled The Invisible Man and signed simply with the letter A. The recipient was Ghislaine Maxwell, and the opening line places the sender somewhere very familiar. I am up here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family. That phrase alone narrows the field dramatically.
So, as Steve mentioned, there was also that email sent to Ghislaine Maxwell from an email address entitled The Invisible Man. And that email began, I'm here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family.
Balmoral, the monarch's private Scottish estate, is not somewhere just anyone spends August. According to the message, days were filled with organised activities. Everyone was exhausted by the evening. There is even a line about keeping an eye on the girls and needing to give them an early night because it was becoming tiring to separate them. It is the sort of informal, almost flippant language that feels jarring when you remember where it was sent and to whom. A few lines later, the tone shifts again. The sender asks Maxwell how she is, mentions Los Angeles, and then drops the line that has now been repeated across headlines around the world. Have you found me some new inappropriate friends? He goes on to say he is free from the 25th of August until the 2nd of September and would like to go somewhere hot and sunny with fun people before returning to work in the autumn. He asks for ideas. He signs off warmly. Maxwell replies a few hours later with sarcasm. She apologises for disappointing him, says she has only been able to find appropriate friends, and jokes about church meetings.
Let's talk about what is being suggested here from this latest trove of documents and the potential connection here to the royal family. Why is there so much interest in this specific email?
On its own, it reads like dark humour between two people who believe they were untouchable. Seen in context, it is something else entirely. The timing matters. This message was sent just months after the alleged abuse that took place between him and Virginia Giuffre. That allegation later became central to his public downfall and the settlement that ended the civil case brought against him years later. Andrew has consistently said he does not recall meeting Virginia Giuffre and denies any wrongdoing. He has also said he cut ties with Epstein once concerns were raised. But this email places him in active contact with Maxwell well after those concerns were already circulating privately. The sender never names himself, but the clues are difficult to ignore. In a follow-up message 2 days later, the Invisible Man writes that he has lost his valet. The man had been with him since he was 2 years old and died in his sleep. The message describes feeling off balance, overwhelmed, and adrift. He adds another telling detail. He says he has left the RN. Those two letters refer to the Royal Navy. Andrew formally stepped down from active service at the end of July 2001.
The Invisible Man writes, I'm here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family. Have you found me some new inappropriate friends? The following year, Maxwell writes to a contact in Peru, referring to the Invisible Man.
The dates line up precisely. He also mentions that his office has been restructured and that his life feels in turmoil. He asks Maxwell for ideas on how to get his mind back on track. Again, the tone is intimate, confiding, familiar. Elsewhere in the same document release, the same account discusses a possible trip to Peru in February 2002. The following month, Andrew did, in fact, undertake a 6-day official visit to Peru as part of celebrations marking his mother's long reign. These details are why lawyers and journalists believe the sender was Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, even though his name does not appear in the email itself. The documents were released as part of a wider disclosure by the US Department of Justice, which began publishing material on December 19th. Andrew's name appears repeatedly across the files, often in connection with Epstein and Maxwell.
Saying that he is interested in some two-legged sightseeing, intelligent, pretty, fun. Andrew has previously admitted to associating with Epstein, but denied any accusations of wrongdoing.
One image included in the release shows the then prince reclining across the laps of several women, their faces obscured, while Maxwell stands above them, looking down. The photograph has circulated widely and has been used to illustrate the nature of the social environment surrounding Epstein at the time. Another newly released memo confirms that in April 2020, US authorities formally requested assistance from the UK government to arrange a voluntary interview with Andrew. The request related to his links not only to Epstein and Maxwell, but also to Canadian fashion designer Peter Nygaard, who has since been convicted and sentenced in Canada. The memo states clearly that Andrew was not considered a target of the investigation, and that US authorities had not gathered evidence that he committed any crime under US law. But it also makes clear that if he declined a voluntary interview, authorities wanted the option of a compelled interview under oath. Andrew never agreed to be interviewed. Buckingham Palace has consistently maintained that he cooperated fully through his legal representatives. Critics argue that cooperation does not normally exclude sitting down to answer questions directly.
Andrew is far from the only figure to be implicated with the disgraced financier. Donald Trump's name has come up dozens of times in this latest release, including in an email from an assistant US attorney indicating the now president had travelled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously reported.
What makes this email so damaging is not just the language, but the ease with which it was written. There is no sense of caution, no sense of distance. It suggests a relationship that was ongoing and informal, even as public scrutiny was inching closer. It also feeds into a broader pattern that has followed Andrew for years, a tendency to downplay appearances, a belief that context will protect him, an assumption that private jokes will remain private. For an audience watching this story unfold in real time, especially those who remember the early 2000s vividly, it is another reminder of how different the rules once felt for people at the very top. The palace has not commented directly on the content of the email. Andrew himself has said nothing publicly about this latest release. The exact details around who knew what and when remain contested. Many questions remain unanswered. But documents like this make it increasingly difficult to argue that these associations were brief, accidental, or misunderstood. So the question now is not whether this email will change Andrew's position. That damage was done years ago. The question is whether each new release continues to erode the remaining silence around how deeply embedded he was in a world that most people would have walked away from far sooner. And that leaves us a question for you. What exactly was meant by inappropriate friends? Do documents like this actually move the story forward, or do they simply confirm what many already suspected? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you want to stay up to date with the latest royal developments, news, stories, and gossip, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.